years, sorry. Instead of investing in our futures, leaders in Albany have responded with austerity budgets, cutting essential services that deeply impact working and poor New Yorkers. Working and poor New Yorkers are paying the price that we should not have to pay. More than 1.3 million are at risk of eviction. 42% of New Yorkers are experiencing food insecurity, and over 2.5 million have filed for unemployment since the beginning of the pandemic. Budget cuts are tax hikes on the working class and Black and Brown New Yorkers. We suffer while the rich get richer. New York State's 120 billionaires saw their combined net worth rise an enormous 77.3 billion in the early months of the pandemic. We are here today because we are making calls and we are demanding change. Cuomo can prevent budget cuts and protect the future of New York State by equitably taxing the wealthy to pay not what is fair, but what they owe New Yorkers, because it is important to highlight that they obtained their wealth from extracting it from our communities. I want to give a shout out to the organizations who have signed on to this initiative. We have joined forces to make this call and work to tax the ultra rich in New York State. We have Strong Economy for All Coalition. We have the Alliance for Quality Education, Volkl New York, Make the Road, New York Communities for Change. We have NYCDSA, Citizen Action of New York, Housing Justice for All, Empire State Indivisible, Working Families Party. Locally, we have Metro Justice, we have Free the People Rock, we have the Citywide Tenants Union, we have Rock Citizen, and we have so many amazing local community organizations who have signed onto this effort, who are joining us today to make this call. I also want to shout out our Rochester delegation. Rochester finally has amazing representation, and Harry Bronson has helped in the assembly with the addition of Demond Meeks, Jen Lunsford, and Sarah Clark. And we have two amazing state senators, Samra, Brook, and Jeremy Cooney. And I think we are feeling extremely hopeful this year so that we can go to Albany fighting for not only the needs of the Rochester community, but the needs for all of New York State, because Black and Brown and poor working families across New York State are feeling this catastrophe. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Again, I went ahead and I dropped the Zoom link. I am keeping an eye on the chat, but I would love to hear from our speakers today. And we want to go ahead and kick it off with Demond Meeks, who is one of the sponsors of the bills that we are sponsoring for the taxing the ultra rich in income. And I'm gonna kick it off to you to say a few words. You're on mute.
I realized that. I said just a few words. I prepared a few pages here. So, I think, for me, this is something that's long overdue. In my work in the past doing grassroots organizing, we've advocated for a millionaire's tax here in New York State. And, if I was a preaching man, it would be a sermon coming from the book of Luke that would say to one whom much is given, much is required, and I think this is one of those things, it's not so much about, us versus them. This is about us working together collectively to protect New York State. So, this is a progressive personal income tax bill, and it helps to reevaluate the rates at which different income levels are taxed in New York State. And we know the challenges that we face here in the Rochester community, and they've just been exacerbated as it relates to the pandemic. But issues regarding healthcare, issues regarding education, and the list goes on and on, housing insecurities that we're dealing with. And we can't look at ways to simply say, okay, we can generate a little revenue here and get things done. We have to look at the full picture and look at ways that we totally change the way we go about generating income in New York State. And we're in support of this bill, and we want to spearhead legislation that will assure that New Yorkers who have more disposable income pay more. And this targets the top 5% of New Yorkers. And we believe that this will help us better the outlook of New York State in regards to a number of programs that are necessary, such as education, healthcare, as well as housing. So thank you.
And thank you, Demond, and congrats on being one of our newest representatives. And up next, we have Harry Bronson, Assemblyman Harry Bronson, long-term champion of our rights here in Rochester. So we're very excited to hear what you have to say, Harry. And thank you for continuing to stand up for us, fight for us, and be on our side.
Thank you, Stanley and Stevie, and all the organizations that are supporting this movement and moving us toward equity. And a big shout out to my amazing progressive state delegation from the Rochester area. It's so, I'm so happy that I have some troops with me to fight this battle. So today I stand with you. And I stand for equity and fairness. While many of our families are suffering from the effects of COVID-19 and the subsequent economic downturn, the fortunes of the world's richest people soared in 2020. The pandemic caused economic devastation for so many, but not for the rich. COVID-19 brought into focus the inequities that have actually existed for a very long time of healthcare, education, housing, childcare, and food security, just to name a few. I've seen the struggles families of Rochester face each day just to make ends meet. These folks have worked so hard, have done so much with so little. Despite our family's best efforts, the system, as it's set up, creates barriers and oftentimes ensures failure. It is time for a change. It is time for those with much to do their fair share. That is why I'm supporting legislation that will increase state revenues by requiring those who can afford it to give just a little more to pay their fair share. This increased revenue will help us provide the much needed services that will allow our children to achieve a brighter future, our families to be secure in their homes, our seniors to access quality health care, and all to have the nutrition they need. This is a matter of fairness. We are in this together, and we all have to put in our fair share together. All of us must be part of the solution in an equitable way. Progressive taxation will move us closer to equity. Thanks for having me here today. Glad to be with you.
Thank you so much for your work, Harry Bronson, and thank you for your words and your support in this effort to tax the ultra rich. 2021 is the year to demand that Albany run us our money, essentially, because we need it. And we are not taking anything less than what we deserve and what we are owed. So thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next Assembly speaker to say a few words if they choose. I am happy to introduce Assemblywoman Jen Lunsford, who is also a working mother like myself. So Jen, if you're here, we have the little graphic box, so it's hard to find people here. Please take it away.
I am here, and thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here with Harry and Demond and Sarah, Samra and Jeremy as part of this huge delegation going to Albany and fighting for what is no longer a fringe issue, what is no longer a progressive issue. This is a mainstream policy that is supported by regular, everyday New Yorkers. When I walked around my suburban district, I can't tell you how many people told me this was a policy they supported. We need to provide revenue from those who can afford to give it. Right now, we are in a financial crisis. And it is affecting not just our individual families, but organizations that provide essential services to our neighbors with disabilities, to children in poverty, to families who are struggling to put food on the table. They have received 20% cuts across the board, and we need to figure out how to restore that revenue to them. so they can continue to provide services to the most vulnerable among us, to those who need help. And I'm here to fight for every dollar we can get. There are so many plans beyond just the ultramillionaires tax. We have so many progressive, bold revenue raisers, like the pied-à-terre tax, like stock transfer and buyback taxes. We can find ways to pick up revenue from different resources to build a pot of money that will help lift us out of our current financial crisis and move us towards a more equitable and fair tax base here in New York. I will not stop fighting. I know that my colleagues won't either, and I can't wait to really make this statement in Albany to get us everything we deserve.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. It's really exciting to hear from all of you here that we're all on the same page. And I think a key point you make is what we're asking for is, it's not radical. It's, asking for our fair share. It's asking to keep our students in schools having access to good quality education. So I think that was such an essential point you bring up. Up next, we have longtime local and statewide advocates, Assemblywoman Sarah Clark. Thank you for being here, and we're excited to hear your voice.
Thank you. I definitely join the chorus of my colleagues in the Assembly with Harry, Jen, and Demond, and soon you'll hear also from the senators as well. Long before this crisis, we knew the middle class was shrinking at a rate faster than we could keep up with. We knew upward mobility from working class to middle class didn't exist anymore. The way we tax in our state, well, in our country, but that's a whole nother conversation, is outdated. It's not, it's not keeping up with the way money is made in the 21st century. It's time to put real revenue raisers on the table that are up to date and actually ask those who can most afford it to pay back and invest in our state, our people, our families, our neighborhoods. The middle class, the ability to pay for college, the ability to have equitable education, housing, nurses, teachers, food access, job training, childcare. These are the things that grow our state. And these are the things we're not able to invest in if we don't ask for more from those who most can afford it. So it is time to tax the ultra wealthy. It is time to look at all the revenue raisers within the crisis that we have now seen, the disparities that we all knew existed for years and decades, coming to such bright light. We need to look for opportunity, and opportunity is revenue to reinvest in our state, reinvest in the people and families that make our state great. We can no longer just go by. We know trickle-down economics does not work. We don't need any more proof than our shrinking middle class. We need to invest in our people, and that requires asking more from those who can afford it. So I am so excited to stand with you today and for your continued advocacy over the years. We are at this moment because of so many of you on this call right now and the work you've done to make this a real issue. And like Jen said, and Stanley said, to now make this not even a progressive issue. This is just what needs to be done. So thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited to join this fight and make sure our voices are being heard.
Thank you so much for that, Sarah. I think it's important to highlight, and I've heard it here repeated, that this is no longer a fringe issue. This is not radical. It is equitable. And we as New Yorkers, we are demanding that New York State raise 50 to 70 billion annually in new revenue from the wealthiest New Yorkers. We will accept nothing less than the most progressive revenue raisers. And it's important to highlight that because our New Yorkers need it. Our CSD needs it, Schenectady needs it, all Black and Brown communities across the state need it, and we will accept nothing less than the most progressive revenue raisers. Working New Yorkers refuse to balance the budgets on the backs of the many while a few profit. Together, we can flip our broken tax system upside down to help millions of poor and working people across New York State, and especially in Rochester, where it has essentially been ground zero in our education crisis. We face a severe education budget deficit, a housing crisis. So many things have happened here in upstate, and we're no longer going to allow them to make it seem that this is a downstate issue that is not felt widely across the state, because we see it right here in our own community. And with that, I want to go ahead and introduce one of our new Senate members, Senator Samra Brook. I am so excited for this introduction, and I'm so excited to hear from you. Again, I can't see you, but I see your name. So if you're here, feel free to take it away.
Yes, I'm here, Stevie. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for joining today, and especially to the advocates and the elected leaders and community leaders who have been doing this work, oftentimes tirelessly, oftentimes silently in the background, pushing these things forward. And then sometimes we have to get loud. So I'm happy to be here with all of you as well. I was elected to represent the needs of my community here in Monroe and Ontario counties. And that means doing what needs to be done to protect and support the working families, students, seniors, and the frontline heroes who live here. And every day now, I'm hearing from people in this community who are afraid that they don't have enough money to put food on the table, afraid they won't be able to pay their rents and mortgages at the end of the month, afraid that if they get COVID, they won't be able to cover exorbitant medical bills. And at the same time, New York's billionaires have grown $77 billion richer during this pandemic. That's not okay with me, and it's not okay with the residents of the 55th District. We have to stop state budget cuts and protect the future of New York by ending tax breaks for the wealthiest New Yorkers and investing in our New York. A budget is a statement of values, and it's past time for this state to say, we value education, we value healthcare, we value working families, and we cannot rebuild this state on the backs of the hardest working New Yorkers who have already given so much. And we have to find ways to raise revenue by insisting that our wealthiest residents contribute their fair share. It really is echoing everything everyone else has said. It is the only way forward for this state, and we have to act now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Brook. Everything you're saying is right on. Thinking about the RCSD children, I see something in the chart speaking about them, Black LGBTQ youth, and thinking about what we can do and the dire need to step up and make bold decisions as we demand that the wealthy pay their fair share is so significant right now, especially in this time. So thank you. And finally, we have Senator Jeremy Cooney. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being one of our progressive delegation members, and we're excited to hear your voice.
Well, thank you, Stanley. And good morning, everyone. I'm coming to you from a very dark and barren district office, but it reflects the change that we have because I inherited this office from someone who would never support this type of legislation, right? And so we have made that change in the outstanding delegation that you have heard from. I'm so proud to be with Senator Brook in the Senate and with all of my colleagues in the Assembly and under the leadership of our Dean, Harry Bronson. Let me say this, nothing changes without action. Nothing changes without action. Action is required. So if we talk about wanting to make sure that everyone pays their fair share, then we need to pass legislation. We need to have a budget that reflects a fair share appropriation of taxes. This cannot be borne on the backs of upstaters who for too often have borne the highest property taxes, who have had to do more than their fair share while others have profited. And I'm proud to add my voice to this chorus of Rochesterians, of Finger Lakes residents, of upstate New Yorkers, of New Yorkers, to say that that is unacceptable and that will change. So again, nothing changes without action. I'm committed to getting to work and doing the action, to joining on these legislative bills, to making sure that our voices are heard and to making sure that the people who are calling our front desk just in the room right over here, make sure that they know that we have their back, because we do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy that we were able to hear from our Rochester delegation. Um, and I'm happy that they are working with community members. They have been highly engaged in the Rochester community. I'm happy to say that our constituents actively know who their representatives are, which isn't the case for most communities. So I'm really happy that we have some real representation, that we have real people on the ground in these seats representing us and will be our voices in Albany, and that they know that we, the people, have their back to make this change happen because we are in this together. And it is equally important to hear from the people who have been working on the ground, making moves, fighting for those in our community every single day. So we're going to hear from 3 community members who have also been organizing and just making moves and fighting for the people. And I want to start off with Liz McGriff, who is with the Citywide Tenants Union. You've seen the actions that have been happening all over Rochester, stopping illegal evictions from happening in the dead of winter in the middle of a pandemic. But even if those weren't the case, no one should be evicted from their home. It's inhumane. Everyone deserves housing. So I want to pass the words on how raising revenue is going to impact housing and what she has seen on the ground.
Hi, thank you, Stevie. I'm very happy to be here with a lot of our delegates for the state of New York, and my expectation is great things for our community. One of the things that we've been doing in Rochester is when you think about shelter and housing, nobody should be without a home. Our hospitals, our shelters are overrun, mainly because of the system that is in place currently, and we need a change in that system, where the needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many. We need to change that system. We need an equitable system that gives people the opportunity to have the TOPA. If the landlord's not keeping up with the property, then the tenants can have the opportunity to purchase it. We also need a system of racial equity, and one of the ways to build that equity is the giving people, I was just going to talk about the system and talk about some of the things that has been happening in Rochester. But one of the things that I've seen by just reaching out to folks is, a lot of people know about the story about Cleonda and what happened to her. On December 18th, her family was evicted, a mother with 3 children, by 30 police officers. So you see that inequity. They can protect one man's property and send out a force of 30 officers in order to evict this one family in the middle and the coldest day in winter. That's inequity, because one person property shouldn't take the place of a single family's life. It's cold right now in shelters. People are getting they're getting COVID. They're attracting it because of they're not able to have healthy housing. They can't social distance when they're in a shelter. So you see these inequities we see in our system, where a single mom that has kids, and now because kids are home because of COVID, she can't go to work. She can't go to get an income. So now she's in jeopardy of losing her kids because her kids are getting into trouble when she isn't there. So she had to cut down her work situation. There was a healthcare worker who was in, because she had to work so many hours, and because then she got COVID and then she lost her income. And so then she's in this situation of being evicted. This is happening to a lot of people who are on the front line. We have people that are in healthcare fields that are in jeopardy of losing their housing. So we have this system that's not equitable. And I think changing it around and flipping the script and having people that have the income, like the progressive tax, that would if your income over 300,000, then you're bringing in income to the state, not just for one individual, but it helps the whole state. So by taxing the people, the ultra rich, ultra rich, then it brings money into the state. And then these programs that helps families, helps low income folks, helps them stay and keep their homes, helps them to build equity, helps them to thrive in our community. So like the capital gains tax, it's another tax that tax stocks, and it brings more income into the state. So the state, for years you hear the state saying, we got to cut this, we got to cut this, we got to cut this. Never have they put anything in. It's always cutting. So this would give an opportunity to put money in the budget where we can extend those funds to community members, and they don't have to live under the threat of losing everything if they lose just one month's or couple of months worth of income. So this is, and if we pour them into the right programs such as education, those programs that keep getting cut. So this is why I'm here. This is why we're here with Cleonda's situation, just to build into this current system and how it's not fair for working class folks. Cleonda's still fighting just to retrieve her stuff from her apartment. The landlord's holding it hostage. We asked police, we asked the city, we asked code enforcement, and none of them are willing to assist her just to get her stuff out of the apartment that she was evicted from. And the landlord can go on talk radio and say, "Oh, I'm such a good guy, and this bad landlord, this bad tenant is going after me," but it's really not that way. And he can flip that narrative and have people kind of reach out and support, but Cleonda can't get support just to get her things out of his apartment so she can move on with her life. So there's this inequity. Now there was 34 police officers there, but now they can't help her to retrieve her stuff. So that's that unfair equity. So I'm hoping, we have a lot of delegates that are here today, and that I'm hoping this system changes. That's what I want to see, is a system change where it's equitable across the board for all folks.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Liz. And thank you for being on the ground and constantly, being in these spaces, uplifting voices that we otherwise may not hear and sharing their stories. Very thankful for you and all the work you do. Up next, we have Kim Smith from Volkl New York. Kim is an organizer, just like Liz. She's always on the ground, very connected to the community. We're thankful for you, and we're very excited to hear from you, Kim. You are muted.
Am I off of mute?
Yes, you're off mute.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Stanley. Thank you, Stevie, for having me. Very proud to be here. So Volkl New York is extremely committed to this movement, and Tax the Wealthiest New Yorkers is a part of our 2021 platform for economy and democracy. And as we are on the ground building and organizing with our most vulnerable and marginalized communities, we have found that instead of taxing the wealthy, as everyone has stated here, instead of taxing the wealthy, New York has instead chosen to place more strain on our Black and brown and low income communities. And that fact is supported by really everything that we have discussed here. And I would just include, again, that we see it within the housing crisis. So with COVID on the rise and shelter budgets being cut, some of them even shutting down, more and more people are forced to live on the streets. There are budget cuts to life-saving harm reduction services. And those cuts have resulted in overdose deaths, increased health risk, such as abscesses. And very recently, and I mean within the past few months, the New York State Department of Health recently had a call to action because here in Monroe County, in Rochester, there has been an increased cluster of HIV cases among intravenous drug use, and lack of housing was noted as some of the primary risk factors. But within that call to action, it did not include additional resources. And people are literally dying. So we either tax the rich today or deal with the massive deaths of our community tomorrow. And the body counts are high. And I don't remember who mentioned it, which delegate mentioned it on this call, but someone mentioned or alluded to the fact that the budget is a moral document. And I would hope that as each of our Assembly and Senate persons go into the budget season, that you go into that session with that very thought that the budget is a moral document. And within that document plays an integral part in the quality of our lives, the lives of our low income and Black and brown communities. And we ask that you go into that budget season doing what's right and bringing home our fair share, because as we have all mentioned on this call, our people are dying and we cannot afford one more death.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Kim. I don't think I could have, I could not have said it any better. You always have a way of bringing words that people always lose. And I always love hearing you speak. So thank you for saying all of those amazing things, because we're in this together and we're going to make sure that we are getting what is owed to us. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our last speaker, because I also think it's important to hear from the parents. Again, Rochester has faced a massive deficit in our education system. And our next speaker is someone who has been on the ground demanding Cuomo cut us our checks. She's even called on Cuomo's mom to come collect her son because he's not doing right by our children. I have so much love for our next speaker. Her name is Serena, who is a mother of an amazing boy here in Rochester, who has been fighting for RCSD, who has been fighting for not only her child, but the children of Rochester and the children across New York State. So Serena, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. First of all, I want to just reintroduce myself. My name is Serena, and I have an 8-year-old son. His name is John, and he's in the city school district, school number 15, right? I'm going to try not to cry because I'm so upset and I'm so hurt at the situation that our city school district is in. For lack of a better word, we're in a 911 situation when it comes to our city school district, with the funding and the mayhem that's happening right now, the scrambling that's going on, and it's affecting families like myself. I'm a single mother and I'm a low-wage worker. I'm a grad student at Nazareth College studying social work. So having to raise my son on my own with a very minimum income, and then to be in a district that hardly has any resources to support me and my son puts extra strain on us. But I would like to say thank you to Stanley Martin, Stevie Vargas for putting this together. I want to thank Harry and Sarah and Samra and Jeremy for being on this call. Thank you for everyone that has spoken in all the different organizations. So like I mentioned, I'm a single mom. And Sarah said that the middle class is shrinking. I'm in the poor class and we're suffocating. Samra said that people are coming to her and that they're scared. I'm scared, anxious, angry, and everything in between. We were given MiFis as a parent. Let me give you the parent story. We were given MiFis at the beginning of the pandemic. Those things don't work. We were given laptops. Those things are subpar. How is my son supposed to get an education from a subpar laptop? This Zoom schedules are ridiculous. They cannot sustain mental health for an 8-year-old, especially if you're living on a low income, a child has a single mother like myself, and I have other outside responsibilities. It's not doable. But if we had the resources we needed, if we had the supports we needed, we could make it work. But we don't have the external supports. I am for the progressive revenue raiser cuts. Please be for them because it's a moral obligation. It is the right thing to do. Education is a human right, as social work has taught me. And if you can't make that decision to make those razor cuts, think about me, Serena Victor. Call me, talk to me personally, and I'll give you more stories about why you should make those cuts about it. Think about me, think about my son. He's 8 years old. He needs a fighting chance to be a citizen in this country that is able to uphold a job, able to contribute to this economy, but he will not be able to do that if we do not fund the schools. If we do not help the poor like myself, we won't have that in the next generations to come. So think about my face. Think about my voice if you're having a tough time about these razor cuts that need to happen. But I'm pretty sure all of you that are on here that have the power to make these cuts are going to do the right thing, because the very fact that you're on this call, that you're with us, tells me, and I'm putting my vested interests in you, I'm putting my good faith in you, knowing you will do what's right for us, that you will fight the good fight, that you, if you have to drag another senator by the neck and say, we're gonna do the right thing, that you will do that. You would drag them kicking and screaming to say, I got a little boy named John in Rochester that it depends on me. I have a single mom named Serena depending on me, and a whole host of other people that need to stay in their homes and receive health care and all these different things. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Serena, for your words. It has been an honor to work with you in the Rochester community. I've met John. I love John, and I love you and the work that you've been able to do. We have had this launch, not just in Rochester. It kicked off in New York City, and then yesterday in Albany, where you were able to hear from not only electeds, but everyday people who are organizers. We are experts in our own lives, and we know what our needs are. And you've heard the needs of the Rochester community that is very similar to the needs of New York City, Albany, Schenectady, and every city in between. So thank you for sharing your words, your time, and your support with us today, because you've heard everyone say that without these revenues, without generating income for New York State, we will die, we will lose our homes, we will lose our education, we will lose our health care, and that's not something that we can afford. We literally have no other option than to raise revenue on the ultra rich, because our survival depends on it. This is a moral obligation, and we are done paying for the lifestyles of the ultra rich while our families go hungry. And so we are demanding that we tax high incomes, that we tax wealth, that we tax big business in the financial sector to generate anywhere between $50 to $70 billion a year, so that our communities can finally have equity, so that John and all children in Rochester and across New York State can receive their education, their medication, and get their health care, so people can stay in their homes, because we need stability in order for our economy to survive, in order for our family to survive. People are scared that the ultra rich will leave, but everyday New Yorkers are fleeing in droves. And those are the people that we need to fight for. So I do know that we have media here. So if anyone of the media has any questions that they would like to ask of people who spoke, or to ask questions on the revenue raisers that we are fighting to implement, feel free to either drop your question in the chat or take yourself off mute to ask anyone here, so that we can answer your questions. I'm happy to say that we stayed within the time frame, even though you've heard some pretty intense stories and examples of what we're experiencing here on the ground. So I'll give it a minute for people to, for the media to ask their questions or drop their questions in there so we can answer them quickly before we go into our action. All right. I don't think the media has any questions, which I'm not surprised at because you heard everything that you needed to. I think we laid it out pretty clearly on what we want and what we're demanding. We did not mince any words. Do you see? Okay, we do have one question. And if anyone would like to take that one, I'll read it out loud. It is, could someone address this? What is the current state of the 6 proposed bills? And what is the path forward in the Senate and Assembly?
Sure, I'll take this. So the bills have been introduced by various members in the Assembly and in the Senate. I know in the Assembly, we have in a Broadway conference, some of those bills, meaning we've had discussions within the majority conference of potential movement of the bills. My speculation to some degree is that these issues will all be taken up as we begin budget negotiations after the governor releases his budget, which will happen soon. And we will be taking up various approaches to increasing revenues, and all of the bills that are supported by the various organizations here will be part of that discussion. Another path may be, although I think it's more unlikely, will be that we try to do the revenue increases outside the budget. But if history serves us as an indicator of what will likely happen, those kind of things usually happen through budget negotiations where we have to be strong and fight for these revenues so that we can provide for our families that are in desperate need.
Thank you so much for that, Harry. We're going to go ahead and move on. I think you saw that we dropped a link for an action to sign on to Invest in Our New York. It was dropped by the Citizen Action account. So investinourny.org, where you can go ahead and take action. Please hit up social media, meet with your electeds, get them on board to, well, not ours is on board. We can still continue to meet with them because they need to know that we are constantly here to back them whenever possible. Rochester gets rowdy. We have no problem showing up in droves if need be to make sure that this gets passed. So taking online action, tweeting, make sure that the governor knows that we are not going to stand for any cuts, but we will stand for supporting the most progressive revenue taxes on raising taxes on the alt-edge. So I want to thank everybody. Make sure you click on that link to take action. And again, I want to thank the local groups who have supported, in addition to the statewide groups, but locally, AQE, Canny, Empire State Indivisible, Free the People Rock, Citywide Tenants Union, Metro Justice, Volkl New York, Rock Citizen, Working Families Party, Rochester, ROAR. We have support of many teachers and everyone on the ground. And I'm happy to say that I'm happy to be a part of this community and be in this fight with you. So thank you for joining us today.